She wasn't just a celebrity, she was a force of nature, a woman who walked into every room like she owned it, and honestly, she did. Her name was Eartha Kitt, and if you don't know her story, you need to sit down right now, because this one is something else entirely. This is a story about a little girl that nobody wanted, who grew up to become one of the most powerful, magnetic, untouchable women to ever walk this earth. And the road she took to get there, nobody could have written it better. So let's start from the very beginning. Eartha Kitt was born on January 17, 1927 in a small town called North, South Carolina. And right from the jump, life handed her the hardest cards you can imagine. Her mother, Anna Mee, was a black and Cherokee woman. Her father, nobody ever confirmed who he was. Some people said he was the white landowner whose property her mother worked on. Eartha grew up not knowing. That question followed her for most of her life, but what she did know early was that she was different, that she didn't quite fit, and the people around her made sure she felt that every single day. When Eartha was just a young child, her mother gave her away, just like that. Left her with a woman named Mamie Kitt, a relative who took her in but never really made her feel like she belonged. The other kids called her a yellow gal because of her mixed complexion. She was teased, she was isolated, she was treated like an outsider in the only home she had. Think about that for a second, before this woman ever sang a single note. Before she ever stepped on a stage, before the world ever heard her name, she was already fighting just to feel like she mattered. And that pain, that deep wound of abandonment and rejection, it never fully left her. She talked about it in interviews decades later. It shaped everything about who she became. When Eartha was around 8 years old, Mamie Kitt passed away, and just like that, she was passed along again. Eventually, she ended up in New York City, sent to live with an aunt in Harlem. And New York changed everything. Harlem in the 1940s was electric, culture everywhere. Music pouring out of every building. And a young Eartha Kitt, this girl who had been rejected and overlooked her whole life, started to find something she had never really had before, a sense of belonging. A sense of possibility. She heard about a dance audition for the Katherine Dunham Company. Katherine Dunham was one of the most respected black choreographers and performers in the world. Her company was elite. Eartha walked in, auditioned, and got the spot. She was a teenager, no formal training, just raw, natural, God-given talent. And with the Katherine Dunham Company, Eartha Kitt started to travel the world. They went to Europe, Paris, London, and something happened the moment Eartha touched European soil. The Europeans saw her differently than America did. There was no segregation. No one was telling her to sit in the back or use a separate entrance. For the first time in her life, she was just a woman. A talented, beautiful, extraordinary woman, and the audiences went absolutely wild for her. She decided to stay in Paris for a while, and that's where Orson Welles found her. Now, if you don't know who Orson Welles is, he directed Citizen Kane, widely considered one of the greatest films ever made. He was a legend, a genius, a man with incredibly high standards. And Orson Welles saw Eartha Kitt perform in Paris and called her the most exciting woman alive. Not one of the most exciting on the entire planet. He cast her in his stage production of Faust. And from that moment, the world started paying very close attention to Eartha Kitt. She came back to the United States with a reputation that preceded her. She started performing in New York nightclubs, and the crowds were speechless. There was nobody like her. She had this presence, this hypnotic, commanding energy. The moment she walked out, every single eye in the room locked onto her and didn't move. And then she opened her mouth and that voice came out, low, smoky, playful, dangerous, and people just completely lost it. She released Santa Baby in 1953, and listen, that record is a masterpiece of performance. The way she delivers every single word, the way she plays with the lyrics, the teasing and the confidence and the warmth, it is a clinic on how to own a song. Over 70 years later, every single Christmas season, that record plays everywhere. Gas stations, malls, radio stations, restaurants, everywhere. Most artists would give anything to have one song that lasts a decade. Eartha Kitt has a song that has lasted over 7 decades and is still going strong. But the music was just one part of what she was building. She moved into acting and became a star on Broadway. She performed at the finest venues in New York and across Europe. She was recording albums, doing television, doing film. She appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show multiple times. She was a regular on the most prestigious stages in America and abroad. And in 1967, she landed one of the most iconic television roles in history. She was cast as Catwoman on the Batman TV series. Now, the original Catwoman had been played by Julie Newmar, a white actress. When Julie Newmar had to step away from the role, the producers brought in Eartha Kitt, and she did not just fill the role, she reinvented it. Her Catwoman was something entirely different, cunning, seductive, unpredictable. She played that character with such intelligence and such magnetism that for millions of people watching, she was Catwoman. Period. End of story. That performance has never been forgotten. So at this point, Eartha Kitt is at the absolute top. Music legend, Broadway star, television icon, she is untouchable. And then 1968 happened, and everything changed overnight. January 18, 1968. Eartha Kitt is invited to a White House luncheon hosted by First Lady Lady Bird Johnson. The event was called Women Doers Luncheon. The topic was crime in America and what could be done about it. There were journalists there, government officials, prominent women from across the country, and when it came time to speak, Eartha Kitt stood up and told the truth. She looked around that room and she said that young people in America were rebelling because they were being sent to die in Vietnam in a war that made no sense to them. She was direct, she was clear. She said the youth of America were angry and they had a right to be angry because their lives were being thrown away. The room went completely silent. Lady Bird Johnson reportedly broke down crying. She later said the experience was deeply painful. The press went into a frenzy, and the United States government, the actual CIA, opened an official file on Eartha Kitt. They compiled a dossier on her. They described her in that report using words that were flat out disgraceful and disrespectful. They called her a troublemaker. They called her unstable. They tried to tear her character apart. And the entertainment industry, which had been so welcoming and so eager to book her for years, turned its back on her almost immediately. Bookings dried up, television doors closed. The woman who had been one of the most sought-after performers in America suddenly found herself shut out, because she stood up in the White House and told the truth about a war that would go on to kill over 58,000 Americans. Let that sink in for a moment. She lost her career in America, not because of a scandal, not because of bad behavior, because she had the courage to say out loud what millions of Americans were already thinking privately. So what did Eartha Kitt do? She did what she had always done her whole life. She kept going. She packed up and went back to Europe. She performed in London, in Paris, across the continent. She rebuilt her international career from the ground up. She toured. She recorded. She performed in South Africa during the apartheid era, which was controversial in its own right, but Eartha played to integrated audiences and refused to perform for segregated crowds. She was not going to let anyone dictate to her who she could or couldn't perform for. She spent years in exile from American mainstream entertainment, and through all of it, she never recanted. Never apologized for what she said at that White House luncheon. Never said she wished she had kept quiet. She stood by every word. In 1974, Jimmy Carter was elected president. And one of the things that happened during his administration was that Eartha Kitt was officially welcomed back. She was invited back to the White House. The blacklist was over. America was ready to receive her again. And she came back on her own terms. The 1970s and 80s brought a whole new generation of fans. She continued recording. She did Broadway again. She appeared in films. A whole new audience discovered her and fell in love with everything she had to offer. And for anyone who had tried to count her out, she made sure they knew they had made a very serious mistake. She never slowed down. Into her 60s, her 70s, her 80s, Eartha Kitt was still on stage, still performing, still selling out shows, still commanding every room she stepped into with that same energy, that same fire, that same complete and total ownership of who she was. She gave interviews throughout her life that are worth watching today. She talked about self-love, about identity, about what it means to truly know yourself. She said, "I fall in love with myself and I want someone to share it with me." That wasn't arrogance. That was a woman who had been abandoned, rejected, and blacklisted, and had fought her entire life to feel worthy, and had finally arrived at a place where she knew her own value. She wrote multiple books about her life. She was fluent in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese. She was a trained dancer, a recording artist, an actress, a stage performer, an activist, and an author. There was almost nothing this woman could not do. Eartha Kitt passed away on Christmas Day, December 25, 2008. She was 81 years old. She had been battling colon cancer. And even in her final years, she had kept performing, kept working, kept showing up. She died on Christmas Day. the same holiday that her most iconic song celebrates every single year. If that's not poetic, I don't know what is. The legacy she left behind is immeasurable. Not just the music, not just the performances, not just Santa Baby or Catwoman or the Broadway stages or the European concert halls. The legacy is what she stood for. The legacy is that a little girl born in poverty in South Carolina, abandoned by her mother, passed around like she was unwanted, rejected and isolated, and told in 100 different ways that she didn't belong, grew up to stand in front of the First Lady of the United States and speak the truth without flinching. Grew up to be blacklisted by the most powerful government on earth and just kept working, kept creating, kept being exactly who she was. She never changed for anybody. She never softened herself to make other people comfortable. She never shrank, and in an industry and a world that constantly pressures women, especially black women, to be smaller, quieter, more agreeable, Eartha Kitt was none of those things, ever. There is a quote she gave that has stayed with people for years. She said, "I am learning all the time. The tombstone will be my diploma." That's Eartha Kitt, curious until the end, growing until the end, performing until the end. Unapologetic until the very last breath, a woman nobody wanted, who became a woman the whole world could not ignore. They tried to silence her once, and all it did was prove that some voices, some people, are simply too powerful to be stopped. Rest in power, Eartha Kitt. There will never be another one like you.